to all the Facebook friends who've been following this social media space, where different line of important scholars who work on anti-caste thought, on Dalit history, but also studies on emancipatory religions such as Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism, who kept this space to talk about important figures in the region and Hermeneutics history. I thank Ajay Shekhar for inviting me as part of this long lineage, group of thinkers and writers who have shared their ideas before me. So thank you. I thank the university and Professor Ajay Shekhar. Your work has been very informative for my own work, and I take this opportunity to build from this critical tradition. Talk today about the Tamil anti-caste intellectual, organic intellectual, Ayothidas and modern Buddhism. I have 15 minutes before me, and I'm going to divide this talk into 3 sessions. The first section I would try to introduce how can we think about Thasar, Ayyothee, I would call it Das, in today's field of anti-caste thought and history. Who is he? How do we understand him? How do we place him in the long trajectory of anti-caste thinkers in the subcontinent? How do we historicize or place him as part of a context in the late 19th and early 20th century? And at last, how do I intervene into the expanding research work that is happening today on Thasar's impact in the Tamil society, but also in the related context of a critique of caste, but also moving towards what I call as a casteless community as an ethical practice. Alright, so Ayothidas' engagement in modern Buddhism today is almost 110 years old. He passed away in the year 1914, and we just celebrated his 180th birth anniversary this year. He was born in the year 1945. It's 180 years since he was born, and interestingly, he succeeds the other great anti-Brahminical or anti-caste thinker from Maharashtra, Jyotiba Phule, by 50 years, and he predates Ambedkar by 50 years too. So it's very interesting to see this figure in this interesting context of anti-caste thought in the subcontinent, but also we need to place him within the interesting context of the Tamil world of ideas too. Right? So bringing all this together, we can say that Ayothidas' contribution has been largely towards thinking about an ethics or a religious idea of anti-caste dwelling or being, and he expands this pedagogy of praxis in the field of Buddhism, but where vernacular or the Tamil language itself becomes a huge archive like Pali or Sanskrit or English, a huge archive to fall back and build this edifice of an ethical religion. So this was largely to democratize the communities which were discriminated by birth in a modern context, a very colonial, post-colonial context. But if you take away the context out, it was an attempt to create public reason and transform the community of Indians into an enlightened community, what Ambedkar would later call the Prabuddha Bharat. So in a sense, it kind of opened up historically for the rejuvenation of Buddhism in the subcontinent in the early 20th century, where it was locally and natively connected. Right? This is a kind of an introduction. And who is he? Ayothidas was born Kathavarayan. He was born in the colonial city, colonial presidency of Madras. He changes his name as Ayothidas when he goes through conversion to Buddhism in the late 1890s, and he converts to Buddhism traveling all the way to Sri Lanka. And very interestingly, from the late 1890s to until he starts the Tamil magazine, and he becomes one of the earliest Dalit practitioners of print media, which was emergent in the Madras city. He termed it as Tamilan as a kind of a voice for spreading the ideas of Buddhism that was emergent in the city. He was a native Medican Siddha practitioner who was rejuvenating religion. He also practiced the print journalism of a kind, right? But also he was an expert reader, writer and commentator of the Tamil culture and history, right? So quite a lot of scholars have tried to map Ayothidas within Professor G. Aloysius had taken this huge attempt to put together the archive of Thasar's writing. You have many scholars like Rajendran Ayyathee, Dhanraj, Alan Ranjangam, amongst others, who works contemporarily to put up Ayothidas as a thought together, in the last 30 years. In a sense, there was a discovery of Thasar, Ayothidas, from 1990s onwards, after a century of a certain forgetting, a certain of an absence of erasure in the long history of Tamil reform in India. Now, the long 20th century had interesting developments. One is, as I told you, is the development of print, of little prints, little magazines or print magazines which emerged from 1885. And historians have documented, particularly Balasubramanian has documented, how in the early 20th century, from 1880s to 1920s, at least in the Tamil public sphere, quite a lot of magazines were run by lower caste or Dalit intellectuals in the Madras presidency. Now, Ayothidas himself ran the magazine called Dravida Pandian, along with another Protestant pastor called John Ratnam, in the heart of Madras city from 1885. Now, John Ratnam and Ayothidas were also started a kind of a commune, a society called the Dravida Karagam, by which after 30 years we have a Dravidian movement emerging. You have a precursor to it by the Dalit Christian John Ratnam, who was a pastor in Madras, a Protestant pastor, along with him who ran the magazine even prior to Thasar's own conversion to Buddhism and this edifice, creation of the edifice, the Tamil Buddhism in the world. So you have a certain world coming together with religion, research and language, and therefore a social praxis of a reformatory religion as an answer to discriminations of a kind in modernity, where Thasar contributes and prepares the ground in the late 19th century. Meanwhile, the roles of the colonial moment, such as the emergence of participatory governance, modern law, the Theosophical Society that comes in Madras, and this interesting discovery of native Buddhism from India, from Lumbini, but also having an interesting Buddhist route from Nepal, Burma, via northern part of India to Madras and then to Sri Lanka. This interesting route as a web of a historical emergence of Buddhism happened in the long 19th and 20th centuries. Douglas Ober's work has recently looked at this history of the emergence of the Buddhist cosmopolis in India, in which Ayothidas' own contribution also comes as a way of interlinking this global emergence of Buddhism as a very modern religion emerged. So it is in this interesting resistant tradition of Protestantism, of a critical hermeneutics, and also a reformed religion for the most oppressed, or the indigenous religion of those who are defined as untouchable or oppressed or avarna. In this context, you have a hermeneutics of resistance, or hermeneutics of an interpretative rigor method of resisting that, but also creating a constitutive worldview through the printed word, which happens with Thasar. You have to keep in mind that there was a dominant hermeneutics of what is caste, what is varna, what is Hinduism, what is Brahmanism, as the knowledge system, the episteme of the Indian tradition also happens simultaneously across the subcontinent with invested power. I'm not going to mention here because that will divert the whole discussion, but Thasar enters into his interesting world of colonial presidential government in this history. His work has to be highlighted. Now, what does Thasar do distinctly? Thasar, as I told you earlier, for the last 7 years, from 1907 to 1914, without leaving a single week, publishes the magazine Tamilan to expand the field of transferring or communicating the ideas of an emergent Buddhism in praxis, but also as an intellectual or as a native civilizational resource for the downtrodden to communicate. There are three paths, I would say, that emerges. There's a critical hermeneutics, a meaning-making process, a resistant meaning-making process, which is devoid of caste sense, which negates the meaning of caste, which Thasar produces in the expansive Buddhism that he recreates. Now, to do this, he has to deconstruct earlier established significations, a system of caste in which he had to demolish the iconographies of that which goes in the name of caste. Right? So in this deconstruction, a book like, who is the true Brahmin or who is the false Brahmin, Yadartha Brahmananya, Vesha Brahmananya, they could be seen as dialectical texts which puts out different or contestatory iconographies and textual significations, so that to foreground through the story of indigeneity a critique of Brahmanism and caste. If this was a deconstructive exercise that Thasar starts with to present his idea of Buddhism as indigenous and our own from this land, you have also the critique doesn't limit there, because it has to emerge into a consciousness of a kind, and for that consciousness of a kind, Thasar also expands into investing his time and experimenting with historiography. One of the texts that invests on this is Indra Desa Sarita, which is titled The History of Indian Country, or History of India, which he writes as a series of 65 parts from 1912 onwards, and then it's published as a book in 1914. And in this interesting interpretative historiography, as we call, what he does is he reconstructs a story of civilization violence against the indigenous people of this land through in the fall of Buddhism and the emergence of a caste-centered worldview, self-centered worldview of Brahmanism emerged. Now, thus, for this purpose, reads quite a lot of vernacular texts, oral narratives, folk narratives, but also classical Tamil canon, including Tirukkural and the Sangam literature, to reconstruct the spatiography or the geography of the Indian subcontinent. Now, on one side there's a deconstructive thrust, on the other side there's a reconstructive discourse or critique which is offered within the textual world. But Thasar was also a man of action, an organic intellectual. For him, Dhamma, Sangha and the Buddha have to be reconstituted as a world, religious world of practice in the here and the now. And for that, Thasar almost becomes, imbibes the role of the Bodhisattva, and then starts this huge enterprise of producing a sacred textbook, a book that remains a certain kind of ritual value amongst the earlier followers of Tamil Buddhism. His attempt at writing the Buddha and his Dhamma, and in Tamil it was called Buddharadu Adi Vedam. Now, it was published in 1914, almost 50 years, almost 40 years before Babasaheb Ambedkar writes the Buddha and his Dhamma in English. Now, this was also a translational exercise, resourcing from Sanskrit and Pali, and written in Tamil as a book, right? It tracks the whole history of how the Buddha story is presented within as the Dhamma, in which the contributions of the Sangha and the role, the figure, the pedagogue figure of the Buddha, how does the figure appear in modern form, are all reinvested. In a sense, a certain imagination from negative essential position converting into a certain constitutive castelessness, a castelessness which is here and now, which can be created in our world, was attempted to create a praxis of community through these textual creations. I would like to invite all of us to think of this history as part of a longer trajectory of resistant tradition, resistance against caste, within a certain kind of history of ethics against Brahmanism, right? So this can be thought constitutively as a huge contribution to the formation of, or to the becoming of, a casteless community.